I call this meeting to order. Welcome to the 11th meeting of the House of Commons Special Committee on the COVID-19 pandemic.
Place by video conference. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, please activate your mic. And when you're not speaking, please make sure that your mic is off and it's muted. Je voudrais rappeler aux honorables députés.
I would like to remind honorable members that... Oh, sorry. I will follow my proper instructions. You have to change languages when you do. So I would like to remind honorable members that if you wish to speak in English, you should be on the English channel. If you want to speak French, you should be on the French channel.
Second here. We're not getting translation? Est-ce que vous recevez?
Can anyone hear the interpreter at all? Does anyone hear the interpreter into English?
I'm looking over to our tech. Je vais les lire en la...
Well, I'll keep reading. I'll read the instructions in both languages, and hopefully the people will hear the interpretation at some point. So I'd like to remind honorable members that if you wish to speak in English, you should be on the English channel. If you want to speak French, you should be on the French channel. And should you wish to alternate between the two languages, you should change the language to the language that you are speaking each time you switch languages.
If you want to speak English, you should speak on the English channel. And if you want to speak French, you should be on the French channel. And should you wish to alternate between the two languages, you should change the channel to the language which you're speaking. And each time you switch languages, please make sure that you switch back and forth. It's not an easy thing to do, but I'd like to say it becomes a habit, but it's still a struggle to go through. De plus, s'il vous plaît, veuillez adresser vos...
In addition, please direct your remarks through the chair and speak slowly and clearly at all times to help our interpreters.
Remarks through the chair and speak slowly and clearly at all times to help our interpreters. I want to remind everyone to speak slowly and clearly. Yesterday, we had some people who were trying to get as much as they could in, and I know some of us have a habit of speaking quickly. Just kind of keep it down, just out of consideration, not only for our members, but also for our interpreters. Finally, we strongly recommend the use of headsets for members who will be speaking. I notice most of you have all questions, and the ones who are speaking do have them. That's certainly appreciated by our interpreters. Enfin, nous recommandons fortement l'utilisation.
We strongly recommend the use of a headset for members who will be speaking. Once again, it's very important, not only for your colleagues who are listening on the line, but also for the interpreters who have to follow you and can hear you much better with a headset. So we'll start. We will now proceed to ministerial announcements. Let's see if the interpretation problem has been resolved. We will suspend for a few moments.
The translation problem, and on devrait avoir tout résolu dans quelques minutes.
Everything should be resolved in a few minutes.
On va voir comment ça va aller.
We'll see how things go. Thank you.
On peut reprendre où on avait laissé tantôt.
On parlait du soleil, c'est ça, là.
Ou les couleurs des cheveux, des couleurs des yeux aussi, Julie.
Oui, tout à fait.
Et on entend très bien les oiseaux.
Oui.
Ah,
oui, ça, c'est grâce à M. Fergus qui vient mettre de l'atmosphère dans notre journée.
Greg, vous avez une autorisation spéciale de laisser votre microphone ouvert pendant toute la durée du Parlement virtuel. Merci, Martin.
Mais Greg, t'es vraiment dehors, mince. Comment tu fais? Comme je disais tantôt, moi, il y a trop de lumière, même quand je suis à l'ombre, mais je voudrais être dehors.
Écoute, c'est pas facile parce que oui, effectivement, il y a trop de lumière. Je devrais, et peut-être je vais changer de point de vue quand.
When I started this morning, it was cloudy, but now the sun is right above my head. Dear colleagues, don't forget that we're online right now and everyone can hear your conversations. I'm going to do a test. Just a moment, please. Excuse me.
Well, when we're not supposed to be on television.
Now we're back on. We're
Yep,
going to have
we
to
are.
resume, or we're going to resume the sitting. And I will go to ministerial announcements, and I understand that there are no ministerial announcements today. So we'll go right into presenting petitions. We now proceed to presenting petitions for a period not exceeding 15 minutes. And I want to remind the members that any petition presented during the meeting of the special committee must have already been certified by the clerk of petitions. The first petition will be presented by Mr. Johns. Mr. Johns.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a huge honor today to table this petition on behalf of constituents from Port Alberni. They're calling on the government to support motion M1, which is the motion tabled by my colleague from New Westminster, Burnaby, and it's calling for the government to make a Canada-made New Deal for the first initiative before the House of Commons, which calls on the government to take bold and rapid action to adopt socially equitable climate action to tackle the climate emergency and to address worsening socioeconomic and racial inequalities at the same time, while ending fossil fuel subsidies, closing offshore tax havens, and supporting workers impacted by the transition and creating well-paid, unionized jobs in the shift to a clean and renewable energy economy. Mr. Speaker, they're tabling this petition because they're deeply concerned about the climate change has escalated into a global climate emergency, and the world is on pace to warm nearly 4 degrees Celsius by 2100, and extreme weather events are now growing with increasing impacts, including floods, forest fires, rising temperatures, killer heat waves, and massive storms, including sea level rise and disruption to marine and land ecosystems. They're citing that the timing of tabling this petition is important. Post-COVID, they're looking for a new normal, Mr. Speaker, that can address these very important issues and help move us forward in a progressive way and to help support future generations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We'll now go on to Ms. May. Ms. May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to present a petition on behalf of my constituents in Saanich Gulf Islands. The petitioners have, and of course, these petitions have taken some time to reach the virtual floor of our Parliament, given the pandemic. Petitioners are calling on the Government of Canada and the House of Commons to uphold the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, as well as the Commission on Truth and Reconciliation and Canada's calls to action in relation to UNDRIP. They call for the immediate halting of all existing and planned construction of Coastal GasLink project on Wet'suwet'en territory. They also call for the scheduling of nation-to-nation talks, which we can acknowledge has commenced, but they also further call on prioritizing the real implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now we'll go to Ms. Rempel Garner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to present e-petition E2303, which has been certified by the Clerk of Petitions and started by my colleague, Alberta MLA Jeremy Nixon, and signed by 16,636 Canadians from every corner of our country. The petition recognizes that the government has refused to acknowledge the unfairness of the equalization program, and it also recognizes the Liberal government's hostile and bourgeois approach to the workers in my riding. I share the anger of the petitioners who have signed this petition, and the petition seeks to rectify this by calling upon the government to allow the province of Alberta to take any and all measures deemed necessary to further its rightful autonomy and advance the interests of all Albertans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We'll now proceed to questioning of ministers. Nous allons maintenant procéder au...
We will now proceed to the questioning of ministers.
First question goes to Mr. Generou. Mr. Generou.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada testified at our Health Committee this week that she waited too long to close the borders. Would the Deputy Prime Minister agree with her?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question. Let me just say that Canada currently has very restrictive border measures in place. One of the aspects of our border measures that I think is most valuable to Canadians.
Mr. Generou.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would remind the member that it was on December 31st, 2019, that a Canadian company, Blue Dot, first discovered evidence of the coronavirus spread. It was also in early January that the Public Health Agency was made aware of the potential spread to Canada. But it wasn't until March 16th, after many calls from all opposition parties, I might add, that this government implemented travel bans. So again, would the Deputy Prime Minister agree that her government waited too long to close the borders?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me just continue my answer. One of the most important and I would say trickiest aspects of our travel restrictions has been to ensure that we have restrictions in place with our largest neighbor, most important trading partner, the United States, restrictions which simultaneously protect the health of Canadians, but also permit essential travel for businesses, for services. That was a complex balance to achieve. I'm very pleased that we have achieved it.
Now we'll go back to Mr. Generou. Mr. Generou.
After all this evidence, now in hindsight, would the Deputy Prime Minister agree with me that the Public Health Agency, and specifically the Minister of Health, lacked the urgency to effectively contain the spread of COVID-19 like in other countries?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, getting the balance exactly right, particularly with the United States, with whom we have the longest unmilitarized border in the world and with whom we have essential trade that needs to continue, was very tricky. I'm very pleased that we've managed to do that in a reciprocal and collaborative way.
Go back to Mr. Generou. Mr. Generou.
To the Deputy Prime Minister, is Canada currently facing or at risk of drug shortages due to COVID-19?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We are very closely monitoring the need for various medicines in Canada.
Okay, we'll go back to Mr. Generou.
Can the Deputy Prime Minister confirm that some drugs, including life-saving drugs, have not sought approval here in Canada due to the uncertainty of the PMPRP drug regulatory changes?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Absolutely not. I would strongly disagree with that assertion. Of course, not every drug which is invented in the world has a manufacturer who seeks approval in Canada, but we always look for ways for Canadians to have access to the medicines they need.
Mr. Generou.
Has a Deputy Prime Minister heard that the PMPRB regulatory changes could lead to drug shortages?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Let me be very, very clear with Canadians. It is absolutely important for Canadians to have access to the medicines they need, and that is something that our government, working closely with the provinces, is focused on.
Will the Deputy Prime Minister delay the PMPRB regulatory changes that come into effect on July 1st?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Our government is focused on making the medicines that Canadians need available to them at an affordable price.
Mr. Generou, you have 50 seconds left.
The Health Minister has dragged her feet on this, and patients are looking for certainty. Again, will the Deputy Prime Minister step in and delay the PMPRB regulatory changes that are set to come into force on July 1st?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Let me first of all say our health minister is doing a fantastic job. She, like the rest of our government, is focused on ensuring that all Canadians have access to the medicines they need and that our country doesn't pay more than we need to for the medicines our country needs.
And now we'll continue with the next question which goes to Mr. Terrien. Mr. Terrien. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that on April 29th, the government created the CRB in order to help students who had trouble getting jobs under the circumstances. But we have to make sure that this student CRB doesn't serve as a disincentive. So in other words, every time there's a student works an extra hour, his or her income has to go up. So my question is this: given the current subsidy for students, do we think that the extra hours worked will bring about extra income for the student? The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much for the question. In answering, I'd like to underscore one thing. As a mother and as a member of Parliament is the most important thing, and that is to protect our young people and protect our students. We must all understand that this crisis presents a particular problem for the young and for students. This is a very dangerous time for them and for their entire lives. That's why I'm very pleased that our government created this support system, $9 billion for our students. We'll continue with Mr. Terrien. Mr. Terrien. I'll start over because I'm in a good mood. My question is this: if the students increase their number of hours, will their income go up in all circumstances? It's a simple question. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank you for the question. I'd like to answer by saying that for our government, and I think that for members of the bloc as well, our priority must be. We'll go back to Mr. Terrien. Mr. Terrien. Well, look, I'm not getting an answer, and yet it's a simple question. Will the student who gets extra hours of work increase his or her income at all times? Simple question. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. And a simple answer too. We will do everything possible to protect and help our young people because we understand the situation, an even dangerous situation in which they find themselves because of the economic. Mr. Terrien. I'll put the question differently. If a student works 2 hours a week, or 2 days a week, will he have the same income of somebody who works 5 days a week? Will the Deputy Prime Minister tell us if she finds that logical? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, perhaps because of the fact that I'm a mother, and I have a lot of young Canadians in my personal life, I must say that I trust our young people. Mr. Terrien. Look, the question is, and answer is simple. I'm not a mother, I'm a father. Let's say the student works 2 days a week. Let me put a simple question. You agreed with the bloc. You said in the House that you felt that there had to be incentives on April 29th. What was done since then? You gave your word to the bloc. What were the results of that in the past 3 weeks? What did you do? I would like to remind members that they have to put their questions through the Speaker. I didn't do anything myself to satisfy Mr. Terrien. Ms. Freeland. No problem, Mr. Speaker. And I understand that the bloc member cannot be a mother. However, fathers too thinks that the young people and students are important. I want to say two things. The first thing is our student appreciates the close cooperation we've had with all the opposition members, including the bloc, of course, and we're always prepared to talk with them and work with them. But with regard to students, I'm personally convinced that our young people want to work. They want to get the experience because they understand the importance of that. I know the answer. The problem is they didn't do anything. They gave their word that they were not going to remove incentives because they thought we were right, but they didn't do anything. How can we trust a government that gives its word but does not follow up on that word after 3 weeks? That's a simple question. The Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I think and I hope that Canadians, Quebecers, trust our government a great deal because I think and I hope they understand that we understand that we're confronted with a great challenge, a great crisis, and we are prepared to do everything necessary to protect the health of Canadians and to protect the economic life of our country.
To Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. My question for the government is this. Public funds should go to workers, not to corporations that cheat the system. Is the government prepared to correct its program to make sure that no public money goes to companies that cheat the system? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the NDP leader that our priority must be to help workers in Canada. We have to help Canadians because our country is confronted with a major economic crisis. But we also believe, because this is our priority, the important thing to do is to find ways to give the money to people.
Money should go to workers, not to companies that cheat the system, not to companies that have their money hidden in an offshore tax haven. Will the government fix their program, fix their plan, so that it is not sending money to companies that cheat the system and is sending money to workers and supporting those who need it?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Look, I agree with the member opposite that our priority needs to be to support Canadian workers in this very difficult time. And what I would say to the member opposite, as the Prime Minister said earlier this week, please name one company that is receiving the wage subsidy support and therefore is able to keep its workers on the payroll that you think should not be getting that support. We'd like to know. We don't want anybody to be cheating either.
Okay, before we continue, I just want to remind members both asking and answering questions to place their answers and questions through the chair, not directly to the person. We'll go to Mr. Singh again. Mr. Singh.
It is ludicrous to suggest that the government is not aware of the countless companies that are registered in offshore tax havens. We have the Panama Papers, every company that's listed in the Panama Papers. For example, recently, your own CRA went after Loblaws because Loblaws put money in an offshore tax haven, which was found to be legal. Your system is designed such a way where companies can put their money in an offshore tax haven, cheat the public. I'm saying, do what France has done. Do what Germany has done. Do what so many countries have done. Don't give help to a company that is registered in an offshore tax haven. Loblaws, Cargill, 2 examples. But you're the government. You can figure that out.
I'm the Speaker, not the government. I just want to point that out and remind the honourable members to place their questions through me, not to me. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm not sure if the member opposite is suggesting that Loblaws and Cargill are in receipt of wage subsidy support. And if he is, I'd like to hear that. But more broadly, I do want to be clear about our government's position, which I'm very proud of. And our government's position is that our house is burning down, that Canadians right now are facing the toughest economic situation since the Great Depression, and our priority is to support every single Canadian worker that we can.
Go back to Mr. Singh.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the government has made it really clear what their position is. Their minister went on TV saying that CEOs could receive $1 million in bonuses with public money. Is that your government's position? Will you adopt Germany's position and ensure that no CEO receives any amount of public money for their bonuses and that all money goes to workers? Will you commit to that?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, look, when it comes to bonuses, I don't think the member opposite is proposing that our government should put in place across the board restrictions on CEO salaries of all CEOs across the country, no matter what. That would be rather draconian. When it comes to our LEAF program, of support for large employers. It is absolutely the case that any company that seeks that support will have to agree to very
We'll go back
strict restrictions
to
on
Mr.
executive
Singh on
pay,
a
share
30-second
buybacks,
question,
and
hopefully, or a
dividends.
15-second question. Hopefully, it's that
Will the
15-second
government
answer.
will the government commit to not sending public money to CEOs, which is what they're doing right now, and ensure that all money goes to workers? That they end this idea that a CEO can get $1 million bonus to receive help. Germany has said that there should be no bonuses for CEOs that are seeking to get help from the public. Will you commit to that? Will the government commit to that?
Ms. Freeland.
Let me commit to two things. First of all, our priority absolutely is to support workers. That's what we're doing. Second of all, companies getting support through the LEAF program absolutely will face restrictions on dividends, share buybacks, and executive compensation.
And now the next question goes to Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Prime Minister Trudeau is having a waterfront mansion built at Harrington Lake at taxpayers' expense. This is a multi-million-dollar temporary lodging, while the other taxpayer-funded mansion at Harrington Lake is upgraded. How many taxpayer-funded houses in the National Capital Region does the Prime Minister need? We have 24 Sussex, we have Rideau Cottage, we have Harrington Lake, the pre-existing guest cottage at Harrington Lake, and now an additional cottage. So Canadians are struggling to pay the bills. How much are they paying for this secret mansion?
The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président, sur un point d'ordre, sur un appel au règlement.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman? Yes, the Liberal Government House Leader. Once again, I want to be creative and very open here, but I don't see how this question is related to what was decided by the House of Commons, not the government, the House of Commons, through a motion. That is, that this committee would meet to discuss issues related to COVID. This has nothing to do with COVID.
Of relevance is one that has come up a few times in previous meetings. I would remind honourable members that the mandate given to this committee by the House stated that the questions of ministers of the Crown was to be respect the COVID-19 pandemic. As noted previously, however, I've seen several instances where questions have been posed to ministers and other topics, and ministers have responded to these questions. That said, the committee's mandate is clear. Questions and answers should be related to COVID-19 pandemic. I would invite all members to ensure that their interventions are consistent with that mandate. Now we'll go back to Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Chair, how much are Canadians on the hook for with this mansion?
Is there a minister who wants to answer that?
Appel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I think my colleague must respect what was decided by the House of Commons with regard to the fact that the committee meets to discuss COVID-19. This is a historic, unprecedented period. We have to be there to help Canadians and debate this issue. We're prepared to listen to any questions. We have 7 question periods a week, but this has nothing to do with the COVID crisis.
Same point of order.
We will continue.
Yes, Ms. Rempel, Gardner.
I believe, Mr. Chair, that when the House of Commons resumed the first time after suspension, the motion passed gave the government unprecedented spending powers in light of the COVID-19 crisis. Ostensibly, this would be the forum in which to question those powers which were given as part of the COVID-19 crisis. So one would think that questioning a major renovation done to the Prime Minister's house during this period under those spending powers would be a relevant question. Thank you.
I'll let the minister who's answering that question answer that when the time comes. But my parameters are to make sure that everything is within the parameters given to this committee. And we'll let Mr. Barrett, we'll let you.
Mr. Chair, is your ruling that my question can't be asked?
Well, it can be asked. Whether it gets answered or not is another story. Mr. Barrett, you have a question.
Yeah, my question is, how much are Canadians paying for renovations to mansions for the Prime Minister while they can't pay their bills?
Encore une fois, sur un rappel
Point of order once again, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind, I'll read the April 20th motion that was read and adopted, that a special committee on the COVID-19 pandemic be created, made up of all MPs who gather, first of all, to hear ministerial statements, secondly, to allow MPs to present petitions, and thirdly, to question ministers of the Crown and the Prime Minister about COVID and the pandemic and COVID-19, period. Thank you very much.
Chair, so is this a point of, are you going to rule on his point of order, Chair?
The point of order, there is no point of order, or the point of order is that we do have restrictions within this committee. And there are parameters on, please don't interrupt this chair while he's speaking. Whoever brought that up will come to you in a moment. Mr. Barrett, I'll come to your point that we do have parameters with this committee and we do have limitations, and I ask the members that they respect those limitations. Now, somebody brought up a point of order. Who was it?
Yes, the point of order was that we couldn't hear the beginning of your statement. My apologies.
Oh, okay, very good. Sorry about that. No, basically that the committee, what I was saying was that the committee does have set parameters as stated by the House, and we are required to stay within those parameters. Now, Mr. Barrett, you have a question.
Okay, so my question is to the government, how much are Canadians to pay for the construction and renovation of secret mansions for the Prime Minister?
Point of order.
Ms. May has a point of order.
Yeah, I think that the honourable member is attempting, no offence, Mr. Barrett, but I think that the use of secret mansion and so on, the tone of the question probably, if I could offer my friend some advice, isn't helping you. I think we might be able to say that the Harrington Lake Cottage has, no, excuse me, I'd like to make a point of order. The Harrington Lake Cottage has relevance to the pandemic in that the Prime Minister and his family sheltered there, and therefore it made the Harrington Lake Cottage connected to COVID-19 sufficient that I think an argument could be made respectfully that the government should answer the question. But I think the
on that point of order, Mr.
the
Chair,
honourable member is using is prejudicial and makes the question
point of order, Mr. Chair,
less relevant.
That is a debate as far as I'm concerned.
On that point of order, Mr. Chair.
Who is it that's
on that point of order, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Barrett, where are you? Okay, very good. Go ahead.
On that point of order, Mr. Chair, it's not my assertion that it is a secret. The Globe and Mail reported that the NCC first said that, quote, there are no new buildings being constructed, closed quote. And then later, the NCC confirmed that they were, in fact, constructing and renovating buildings. So that's a secret, and that's the nature of the question. I don't need coaching from Ms. May or other members. I need answers from the government for Canadians when they're expending tens of millions of dollars.
Very good. We'll put the question out there and we'll see what comes back.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, we're still on the same point of order. There's a pandemic going on right now, not only in our country, but across the entire world. The Parliament agreed to meet to debate the pandemic. It's extremely important. I presume that my colleagues, like his party, have questions related to the pandemic. So, but we have to respect what the House orders are.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that's the answer that, yes, Mr. Steinley.
Yeah, on a response, the Deputy Prime Minister just said this is the biggest financial crisis facing Canadians since the 30s depression, the Great Depression. So spending taxpayers' dollars on renovations to a home while Canadians can't pay their bills is, with all due respect to the government House leader, part of the COVID response, when that money could be spent elsewhere to help Canadians. So I don't understand how the honourable government House leader does not see how this is a valid question when it is really about the priorities of this government.
Okay, now one moment, please. Okay, the debate seems to be going on about more about the question itself and whether it's relevant. Now, I've made a statement, and right now the answer that came from the government House leader seems to be the answer to the question, and the back and forth is not really solving much on this. At this point, I believe we've run out of time for Mr. Barrett, and we'll go on to
point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order.
Mr. Barrett, point of order.
Chair, those interventions were made on point of order. I don't think that the standing orders or the orders for this committee would tell us that points of order are deducted from the member's speaking time.
They were not deducted. What happened is the answer that came from the government House leader
on a point of order, sir. On a point of order, Chair.
Came back as an answer from your question as well on his point of order, but no,
Chair, he prefaced with point of order each time, and you recognized him.
You're absolutely right. I'll take that back, and in all fairness, I'll give that to Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett, I'll give you another question if you'd like. You've got 1 minute and 30 seconds left.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, during this pandemic, Canadians are having an increasingly hard time paying their bills. Businesses are failing. All the while, the government is continuing to construct mansions for the Prime Minister's enjoyment, and they are obscuring it and obstructing that information from the public. How much is this costing taxpayers?
The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, I would love it if my colleague took times to ask questions that are related to the pandemic and not just here, which is affecting not only Canada, but the entire world. So I think my colleague can take the time to focus on that, and in which case we'd be pleased to answer his questions.
To interrupt each other and speak through the chair, not to the Honourable to the leader either ever asked the question or who they're responding to. Mr. Barrett,
point of order.
Seconds. Who has a point of order? Mr. Couric.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Once again, I was unable to hear the first 20 seconds or so of your statement.
Okay, I apologize. I'm not sure. We've been having trouble with translation today. I don't know if you've heard the beginning of that, but we'll go on to Mr. Barrett now for the question. Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Chair, why is it that after the initial inquiry was made to the government about the construction of the secret mansion, that they initially replied that it was not true, but then once they were caught, they then confirmed that the information was true?
The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président, plutôt que tomber dans les
Mr. Chair, rather than fall into conspiracy theories and vast state secrets, I invite my colleague to debate and discuss questions and issues that are related to the pandemic. That is the whole purpose of the House gathering.
On to Ms. Rempel-Garner. Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been suggested that Canada's government has been providing advice to Canadians based at least in part upon appeasing the WHO and in turn the government of China. Would this be an accurate characterization?
The Honourable Minister.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I struggled to unmute myself. This would absolutely not be an accurate characterization.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Okay, that leads into my next line of questions very well. How many lost Canadian lives and jobs can be attributed to the government believing the following statement made by the WHO in January? There's no clear evidence of human-to-human transmission of the novel coronavirus.
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Sorry, I also was struggling to unmute myself. Well, thank you. As the member knows, this is a global pandemic, and the World Health Organization has played an important role in helping convene scientists and researchers from around the world to understand the science as it evolves around this novel coronavirus.
We'll go back to Ms. Rempel-Garner. Ms. Rempel-Garner.
How many lost lives and Canadian jobs can be attributed to Dr. Tam stating in January, quote, "It's going to be rare"?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the member knows, we have been monitoring the coronavirus since we first found out about a cluster of unusual cases in Wuhan in December. At every step of the way, we've
go
been
back to Ms. Rempel-Garner.
about the risk to their health and safety.
How many lost Canadian lives and jobs can be attributed to the minister's opinion that, quote, border measures are highly ineffective, or that, quote, border measures don't work at all in March?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, we've had measures at the border since
Well, I
the
think we're done
beginning
for
of the
now. Is that?
I'm sorry, there was an interruption there. Somebody had their mute off. The Honourable Minister can continue.
Thank you. As I was saying, Mr. Speaker, to allege that there have been no border measures is actually untrue and misleading to Canadians. In fact, we've been screening arrivals at the international borders for quite some time, as the member knows.
Okay, go back to Ms. Rempel-Garner.
I simply quoted what the minister said, so I think she just said that she was misleading Canadians. But how many Canadians' lives and jobs can be attributed that were lost can be attributed to the following statement from the minister? The risk is extremely low for Canadians. There's no need for Canadians to be alarmed.
The Honourable Minister.
As the member knows, the risk assessment that we were providing Canadians at every step of the way was posed on the actual risk to Canadians at that time. And as the risk changed to Canadians, of course, so did our assessment and so did our advice.
Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Does the minister consider the statement, if we all stop moving for 2 weeks, the virus will die, to be COVID misinformation?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, we know that one of the ways that the virus is transmitted is, in fact, people having close contact with others. And I would argue that there is still quite a bit of work to do to remind Canadians that as we loosen our economy, we need to continue to physically distance.
When the minister stated, it's unfortunate that misinformation is creating a perception for Canadians that belies reality at a press conference, was she referring to the advice coming from her, the Prime Minister, and Dr. Tam?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The effects of the pandemic have had significant impacts on different groups of people in different ways. And I recall that particular conversation, in fact, and was talking about the particular effects on the Chinese Canadian community that was suffering from a high degree of racism.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the literal failure of the government, fatal failure of the government to provide timely sound advice to Canadians on COVID-19, would it be fair to say that Canadians should think twice before blindly placing their trust in this government when it comes to measures that take away their civil liberties, safety, and livelihoods?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's an interesting line of questioning the members pursuing. In fact, what's kept Canadians safe is Canadians listening to the advice of public health officials across the country who have been advising them every step of the way how to protect themselves and their families. And I want to thank Canadians for the extreme work that they've been doing to prevent the overwhelming of our healthcare system that we've seen in so many other jurisdictions.
We'll go back to Ms. Rempel-Garner. Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Does the minister support an unimpeded, full, independent global investigation into the origins of the coronavirus?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister and I and many others from this government have stated, there is an imperative that we have a review not only of the international response to the outbreak of COVID-19, but our own country's response. It's going to be a very important way for future generations to learn how to combat global disease.
The next question goes to Mr. Martel. Mr. Martel, please. Good morning. Mr. Speaker, we know that with COVID-19, there are many Canadian citizens abroad who were repatriated. However, there are still some stuck elsewhere, and that is the case of Mr. André Gauthier of Chicoutimi, who is in a prison in Dubai for a crime which he didn't commit by all accounts. This is a file that's been going on for a long time for no reason. Right now, the virus is spread throughout this prison. It's dangerous for him and his health, and his only hope is the Canadian government. I'd like to know when the Minister of Global Affairs will demand that our citizen be repatriated to Canada. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for this question. When I was the Minister of Global Affairs, I worked very closely with the Gauthier family. The member opposite is correct. This is an issue that concerns our government a great deal and concerns all Canadians, especially in that region. We will continue to work with the family, and we'll continue to work with our partners abroad to help Mr. Gauthier.
Je m'excuse.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. We'll continue with Mr. Martel. Mr. Chairman, we know that there are startups that are starting to grow. They are not eligible for government aid right now. And you know that startups don't have any comparables with the previous year. They don't know if they've lost 30% or whatever. These new companies have invested money, they've signed contracts with others, and the banks are reluctant right now to lend them money. So I'm wondering what the government will do for those kinds of companies that are starting up. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there are many situations where companies are in difficulty, and that is why we see challenges and consider changes to our programs. That's very important in a fluid situation like the one we have now. If the member has a specific example, he could send me something and we will consider it. Mr. Martel. Mr. Chairman, we also know that there are entrepreneurs who do not have a business checking account. They only have a personal account and they don't have access to emergency funding because of that. So what I'd like to know, and their company meets all the other criteria except that. So before we consider improving these subsidies, we have to make sure these family companies have access. My question is, if a company opens a business account right now and has no default, is the government open to accepting them? The Honourable Minister.
From my honourable colleague. And as the Prime Minister has said personally, those companies, those entrepreneurs that do have personal accounts, we are working very hard on a solution for those businesses. And we're going to ensure that we are supporting these very hard-working businesses and entrepreneurs in our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Maintenant, nous allons continuer avec Monsieur Martel.
We'll continue with Mr. Martel. The economic reopening plan will be essential for Canada. The government knows that there are other ways to increase taxes to pay off the debt. We have over $200 billion in natural resource projects across Canada. In my riding, we have a project, GNL Quebec, that's very important. I'm wondering when the government intends to restore and accelerate the environmental assessment process to create wealth in this country. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the question. We are very familiar with that particular project. We're working in close cooperation with the province of Quebec on many issues, including that one. I agree with the member that natural resource projects are important for the Canadian economy and will be very important for reopening the economy.
We'll now go on to Ms. Kuzi. Ms. Kuzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Joe Biden's position on Keystone today became a lot clearer this morning when it was reported that former advisor to the Prime Minister, Jen O'Malley Dillon, is now consulting to this presidential candidate. We know the Prime Minister allowed a former US president to intervene in the last election, testing his own foreign interference legislation. And Canadians continue to wait for him and his government to take a tougher stand on China. When will the Prime Minister stand up for Canada and our interests as we rebuild? Or will he continue to covertly use the influence of foreign entities to destroy us and our economy?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I must say that I disagree in the strongest possible terms that our government would ever encourage foreign influence in Canadian democracy. And I have to say, I believe that all members of this House have the same view. Our democracy is precious. Our sovereignty is precious. I think all of us as members of this House are sworn to defend it, and our government certainly has always done that and will continue to do so.
Ms. Kuzi.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very concerned for the economic future of Canada. I see the United States going ahead with their economic prosperity network. I have yet to see anything from our government regarding new supply chains. Mr. Speaker, the pipeline reports that 61 environmentalists now fill senior positions in this Prime Minister's administration. While all perspectives are needed, he continues to ignore the reason and necessity of industry and economy. When will the Prime Minister work towards achieving a balance in the administration, or will he continue to allow his own ideology to hurt the economy and eliminate industry at a time where we so desperately need it to rebuild Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If the member opposite is suggesting that people who believe we need to protect our environment and people who believe we need to fight climate change work in our government, then the member is absolutely right. And I believe that all Canadians understand we need to fight climate change, we need to support the environment, and Canada as a natural resource producing country, a proud natural resource producing country, needs to continue the work which is led by many brilliant people in the energy sector to produce our natural resources in a sustainable way and to protect our environment. That is something we're doing. It's something we'll continue to do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Deputy Prime Minister says that, but this federal Liberal government has shown again and again that they don't care for the Canadian energy sector or jobs in Western Canada. They introduced anti-energy legislation through Bill C-69 and C-48, as all Canadians know, which has devastated the industry. In fact, these two bills alone forced over $200 billion of investment to leave Canada. To add to Alberta's economic problems, we've also had an international oil price war and the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused a huge drop in the demand for oil. Economies across the country are starting to open up again, but the reality is that for many Albertans in my riding, they don't have a job to go back to. When will the government start supporting Canadian energy workers and remove their regulatory roadblocks they keep putting up?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our government absolutely understands the need to support workers across our fantastic country, very much including energy workers. And we understand that energy workers are facing a double burden. They are facing the challenges posed by the coronavirus, and they are facing the challenges posed by a historically low price for oil. That is why our government has stepped up to help them. We have stepped up to help them with the $1.7 billion to clean up orphan wells, an effort which will put people back to work while supporting our environment. The LEAF program, which is now open for applications, is going to support large employers across the country, very much including in our energy sector. And I'd like to congratulate the provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC for working with the federal government to agree on methane emissions. This is very good news for the environment. It's very good news for our energy sector. We're making progress together.
The next question goes to Mr. Richards. Mr. Richards.
Over a month ago, the Prime Minister came out of his cottage and told Canadians that there would be a program specific to tourism and hospitality that would be announced. So can the Minister for Tourism tell us when will that program be announced?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for his important question. The tourism sector is, of course, deeply impacted, and that's why we have the rent support, the wage subsidy, and also the CEBA account, and also the regional development agency funding.
Mr. Richards.
So the minister's skating around the question here. Prime Minister said there would be a program that would be specifically announced for tourism and hospitality. That was over a month ago. So when will that program be announced? I don't want to hear about other programs that exist. I want to hear about the one that's supposed to be coming for tourism and hospitality specifically.
The Honourable Minister.
There is a program directly for tourism operators, and my colleague know about it because we had good conversations about it. And it is to pay the rent, pay the employee salaries, and also to have access to liquidity. And these are the measures that are really there for the tourism sector.
Okay.
Mr. Richards.
So clearly the answer to that question is that program is not going to be coming. The Prime Minister was apparently misleading Canadians. So let's ask about some other things that affect the tourism industry and their ability to reopen when the economy restarts. So when the government makes the decision, whenever that is, to reopen the international borders, tourism operators will certainly need some lead time to be able to make things like marketing campaigns, staffing decisions, put in place safety protocols. So when is the government going to set out some kind of criteria or parameters around how those decisions will be made about border reopenings so that there's some certainty for tourism operators and they can ramp up their businesses again?
The Honourable Minister.
So my colleague, the Minister of National Safety, and I are in close contact and close cooperation. We understand that we need to make sure that we respect the public health authorities' advice. Meanwhile, supporting the reopening of the economy, and certainly tourism has been hard hit. And so that's why we have in place measures until the end of August through the wage subsidy, but also if businesses are really falling through the cracks of the system, they can have access to the Regional Development Agency funding. And of course, we're looking at supporting destination marketing organization as well.
Mr. Richards.
What businesses want, though, is to be able to ramp up their businesses and get back into business. So to be able to do that, they need to have some sense, because you can't just reopen the borders and expect visitors are going to flow across again tomorrow. So they need to know, when will this happen in terms of how the criteria are developed. So will the government be announcing what those criteria will look like so that businesses can have some certainty and some idea of when they will be able to re-welcome visitors and prepare to make sure that things are safe when they do so?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me thank the member opposite for the question. And it's a very important one for Canadians. And I want to start with this assurance to Canadians. The health and safety of Canadians is first and foremost for our government when it comes to reopening the borders. We need to be very, very careful about the epidemiological situation in Canada and the epidemiological situation outside our country. We're also working very closely with the Premier.
Mr. Richards.
So it sounds like, again, we're not going to get any kind of an answer there. So maybe we can talk about the fact that for many tourism operators, they're the whole so important summer tourism season is in serious jeopardy for them. And so with international visitation likely to be down for some time to come yet as well, what will the government do to promote more winter tourism in Canada and more domestic tourism this year?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you to my colleague for his important questions. And I understand the anxiety of people in the tourism sector and expressed by my colleague today, because it is a sector that is hard hit. We did some very important investments in the past mandate to make sure we would be supporting winter tourism, but we want to do more. And that's exactly why there's funding through our Regional Development Agency. And we will continue to engage with the tourism sector as we're trying to reopen and relaunch the economy.
A question of 15 seconds or less, please. And then
we're still not getting any answers on tourism. So let's try about our important oil and gas industry. Does the government agree with the leaders of the Bloc and Green Party that oil is dead thanks to their attempts to kill it?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government understands the importance of the energy sector to the Canadian economy, and we are committed to supporting energy workers.
So what is the government doing to support the industry besides...
Merci.
Mr. Lemire. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Several weeks ago, the Bloc Québécois proposed a subsidy program to the government that would cover part of the fixed costs for SMEs and organizations. Our goal was to avoid for SMEs and organizations when the economy reopened to have to compensate for loss of revenues through credit, which would only mar them further in debt. Can the minister tell us why it didn't create a program that's sufficiently complete and effective to cover SMEs' fixed costs and in order to avoid further debt for them? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. We know that it's very difficult for SMEs and that it's necessary to consider their fixed costs. That is why we introduced several programs. At the beginning, of course, the business credit availability program with a sizable portion of the loan being forgivable. And we also have an important commercial rent assistance program. We will now go back to Mr. Lemire. Mr. Lemire, thank you, Mr. Chair. We now see that the government did not do enough with regard to fixed costs of SMEs and organizations, and that at present businesses and organizations of all kinds have to consider substantial closures or cuts to their activities. Will the government promise or commit to reimbursing fixed costs with the creation of a refundable tax credit equal to 50% of recognized fixed costs? And I hope that will be universal for small businesses, entrepreneurs, among others. So through a refundable tax credit equal to 50% of recognized fixed tax costs. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of course, it's very important to consider the challenges that small businesses are facing. It's a priority for us in the coming months, and that's why we've introduced several programs. We will consider improving programs if there continue to be problems. For example, with our credit for small and medium-sized businesses, we have broadened the criteria of eligibility to ensure that a greater number of SMEs have access to our program. So we will continue. We will go back to Mr. Lemire. Mr. Lemire. Well, in fact, Mr. Chair, we're seeing that assistance for commercial rents is not effective. In fact, we know that many small and medium-sized businesses are not eligible for it. Also, according to the latest survey by the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, 51% of landlords will not use Canada's emergency assistance for commercial rent. Since they have to pay 25% of the rent, it's natural that some will refuse to apply for this program because they do not want to take on a share of that support. Can the minister finally listen to tenants and landlords to make the program more flexible? They're talking about modernizing programs and improving them. Would the option of offering assistance to tenants not have been more effective and fairer? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chair, I know that there are several questions about our commercial rent assistance program. The criteria were introduced yesterday, and as we know, it's clear that there is always the need to listen. But what we wish to say is that it's very important for people to find solutions by working together. And we are working with provinces. This falls under provincial jurisdiction, and that's also an important aspect of this issue. Clearly, our program is going to improve the situation for many businesses, and we will continue to. Mr. Lemire. Mr. Chair, can we expect to see a refundable tax credit to avoid our SMEs being mired further in debt? Honourable Minister. Mr. Chair, we know that there are several measures that are very good. And for now, we've done several things to improve the situation for SMEs. We are going back to Mr. Lemire. Mr. Chair, I discussed with CFDCs in my region, and they're unanimous in saying that the July 15th date for submitting projects to the Recovery Fund is far too short a deadline. Thinking about a recovery, do we think that the government would consider pushing back the date from July 15th to September 30th to give them the means to do their job so that our entrepreneurs can benefit from their recognized expertise? The Honourable Minister, yes, I share my colleagues' enthusiasm for these organizations. And of course, they've gotten the largest budgets of their history, is $70 million more. So what we're trying to do is implement these solutions quickly on the ground. And if my colleague has proposals for us, we'd be pleased to hear them.
Mr. Tansey.
Point of order.
We have a point of order from Mr. Kirk. Oh, sorry.
So, sorry, once again, just
yes.
before moving on to the next question, there was an issue with the translation there. It was, I was not able to understand the last 45 seconds, the volume issue again.
Okay. We'll turn to our tech. Is there anyone else on the line who's having that same issue? Okay,
No.
we have Ms. Vandenbelt with a problem and Ms. Jansen. Okay. What we'll do is we'll probably have a technician contact you directly and see if we can figure that out once we've got this all,
Mr.
once
Speaker?
we get to it after. Yes, Ms. Jordan.
I believe that Minister Joly was probably on the English channel, but speaking French. That's why the translation was, she was just as loud as the translation was.
I see her shaking her head or nodding. I think, okay, we've solved the problem.
Si je peux me permettre,
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, I was on the floor channel, in fact. So if you wish, I can repeat my response to my question, my colleague's question, if you wish.
Okay, yes, please. You've got about 20 seconds to answer the question again, and we'll go from there.
So I thanked my colleague because he is a passionate supporter of these organizations, just as I am. And given that the SADCs have received much more funding, an extra $70 million recently, we can ensure that SADCs can send money out as quickly as possible on the ground to our businesses. And if he has any suggestions to that effect, I'd be pleased to hear them and work with him on those.
Okay, and before going to Ms. Ratanzi, I want to remind all the honourable members that if you're switching from one language to the other, to make sure that the right button is on. And I'm not lecturing, I'm telling you as someone who actually has done that a number of times. So, and I'll apologize in advance for probably we'll be doing that again. So let's just try to pay attention and we'll be fine. We'll go to Ms. Ratanzi. Ms. Ratanzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I wish to inform you that I will be sharing my time with the member from Beaches, East York. During the current COVID-19 pandemic, our government has invested significantly in ensuring that all Canadians are looked after and that all sectors of the economy are looked after as well. Our government introduced the Canada Emergency Response Benefit to look after those that lost their jobs, introduced a top-up, increased the Canada Child Benefit, increased payments to seniors, and provided a one-time additional GST. As well, to assist businesses to remain viable, our government introduced incentives for businesses to keep employees on their payroll, like the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, Canada Emergency Business Account, Business Credit Availability, Canada Emergency Commercial Grant, investments to oil and gas sector, the agriculture sector, to innovators and startups, to Indigenous communities, and many more. And the investments continue to be made as the situation evolves. Mr. Speaker, through you to the Minister of Finance, can the Minister advise how these programs are positioning the Canadian economy to start up after the pandemic? And how does Canada fare in relation to the G7 countries and its investments? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, first I'd like to thank the member from Don Valley East for her question. We have and will continue to be unwavering in our support for families and for our economy. We know that we're all in this together and that our government needs to be prepared to use whatever means necessary to support Canadians and come out of this in a strong position. We're also helping employers, Canadian employers, to protect jobs and to pay their bills by providing programs that were mentioned by the member, like the Canada Emergency Business Account, by offering a 75% wage subsidy to help keep employees on the payroll, and by helping businesses to pay their rent. All of these measures, we believe, will leave businesses and Canadians poised for a strong recovery. We know that we entered into this crisis with a strong fiscal position, and we are willing and able as a country to respond to the challenges posed by COVID-19. We know also that this is a global challenge and that Canada, more so than any other country in the G7, is well positioned to respond based on our very strong balance sheet. So I'd like to thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the member for her question.
The next question goes to Mr. Erskine's.
Thankful that our government continues to listen to Canadians and to adjust and improve support programs based on that feedback. In that vein, I trust that we will extend the CERB, and I hope we build it out on a negative income tax model. Of course, we only face an economic crisis because we face a health crisis, and we know that the answer to the health crisis is to test, trace, isolate, and support. Yet for weeks now, we've seen less than 50% of 60,000 tests, our national daily testing capacity, go used, capacity that itself is insufficient and needs to be scaled up. While BC has managed to contain community spread, my province of Ontario has failed to test quickly, smartly, or sufficiently. On tracing, Dr. Warner at my local Michael Garron Hospital has said that Ontario is aspiring for mediocrity and called these tracing efforts inexcusable. To the Minister of Health, what are the obstacles to improving testing and tracing efforts, and how will our federal government lean in, show leadership, and help overcome these obstacles?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague from Beaches East York for an important question about testing and testing strategy. Last week, we hit a milestone of sorts where we Canada completed over 1 million tests of Canadians, and although this seems like a high number, there's more work to do. We have the capacity in Canada to date to be able to test 60,000 Canadians, and we're reaching somewhere in the average of 27 or 28,000 tests a day right now. And the challenge is multiple. As we know, each jurisdiction has control over their own testing strategy, but I will congratulate all provinces and territories for working really diligently to boost their capacity to do these tests, working in partnership with local public health units, working in partnership with the public health labs. At the federal government, the work that we're doing is to support that increased capacity by ensuring that access to labs, access to resources needed for testing like swabs and reagents, and access to the ability to increase capacity around data are not barriers. And so we continue that work with our colleagues. We know that testing strategies will vary from province to province, but we are very encouraged by the progress that we're seeing to date.
The next question goes to Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris.
This is my first time appearing before the COVID-19 Special Committee of the Whole, and I'd like to take the opportunity to pay tribute to all the healthcare workers, frontline workers, and essential workers across the country who served so diligently and selflessly during the crisis. And I wish also to offer my condolences to the families and loved ones of the far too many Canadians who have lost their lives due to this disease. A special tribute also to Snowbird Captain Jennifer Casey and also the crew of the RCAF Cyclone helicopter crash. Mr. Chair, the fiscal situation facing Newfoundland and Labrador is very bleak and getting worse as each day passes. Since 2008, we've been considered a have province and received no equalization payments. This year, our province is facing a deficit, however, of $2 billion due to loss of revenues and royalties, much due to the COVID-19. While Nova Scotia and New Brunswick each received $2 billion in equalization. We were happy to contribute when we could do so, but now we need help. Will the Government of Canada adjust the equalization program or find another way to ensure that Newfoundland and Labrador is not unfairly burdened as a result of these circumstances?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for his question and for his kind words to all Canadians. I'd just like to assure him that we have been working together with the group at Finance in Newfoundland and Labrador to understand the issues and challenges facing that province, which are significant. Certainly what we've seen during the course of this pandemic is measures to be of significant support. Things like the top up for essential workers have been important across the country, including in Newfoundland and Labrador. The Bank of Canada's decision to move forward and support provinces in the issuance of their provincial debt has been important for many provinces and certainly of significant importance for Newfoundland and Labrador. I want to tell the member that we continue to recognize that the programs that we have, like the stabilization program, for example, are things that need to be looked at in the context of changing circumstances. We know it's been decades since that's been reviewed. And of course, with the equalization program, there's a regular review every 5 years, and that will be something that will take into account the considerations of Newfoundland and Labrador and other provinces to make sure that we come to a good conclusion.
Mr. Speaker, that was eating up a lot of my time there, but that didn't answer the question as to what we're going to do for the next 5 years waiting for that waiting for that change. Mr. Chair, the fishing industry support plan recently announced provides a number of positive programs, including allowing fish harvesters to use last year's catch numbers to qualify for EI because of the anticipated shorter season this year due to COVID-19. But fish plant workers were left out. Will the Minister of Fisheries or Finance announce today that fish plant workers can do the same and use last year's weeks to qualify for EI if necessary, so that they will not go without income after the fishing season?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for his question. We have put in place a number of measures to address concerns that we've heard from harvesters directly, including the extension of EI to make sure that they are able to qualify next year or this year based on last season's earnings. We continue to look at measures that we can address the seasonal workers in fish plants as well as crew on boats to make sure that industry is addressed. Those concerns are addressed. We will work with the industry, with the people in the provinces to make sure that we are addressing all of these concerns as we go forward. And I look forward to having more to say about that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before I recognize Mr. Harris, could you either bring your mic closer to your mouth, Mr. Harris, or closer to the computer, one or the other? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Thank you, Chair. That's as you look at it, but what we want to know is, will you do the same thing for fish plant workers as you're doing for fish harvesters?
I do want to remind the member to address the question to the chair, the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have said all along no Canadian will be left behind. We're continuing to work with the industry to make sure that we address concerns as we go forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Harris.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, we all know that Indigenous Canadians are overrepresented in our federal prisons, and a far higher percent of them are also serving their sentence in prison rather than in the community, thereby suffering a greater chance of infection from COVID-19. Why then has the parole board cancelled or indefinitely postponed parole hearings for Indigenous inmates who wish the assistance of an elder in support of their case, which is the choice of some 40% of Indigenous inmates seeking release on parole? Does the government not recognize this as a discriminatory practice?
Although the time is up, I'll allow for an answer from the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to assure the member we do understand the importance of the presence of elders at those parole hearings. Unfortunately, during the COVID, steps have been necessary to protect the health and safety of the people participating in those entire processes. But we're working very hard to ensure that elder participation can occur virtually until it's such time as we're able to do it in person. We do recognize its importance, and I thank him for a very important question.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford, Mr. Fast.
Madam Chair, the COVID pandemic has left many Canadian companies vastly undervalued and therefore vulnerable to foreign takeovers by hostile regimes. Such takeovers represent significant risks not only to our national sovereignty, but to our national security. Even NATO and the European Union have recently warned of this danger as countries like China buy up stressed assets all around the world. So the last time the Investment Canada Act was strengthened was under Stephen Harper, when we placed tougher restrictions on investments from state-owned foreign investors. And this was a vast improvement, but times have changed. With the COVID pandemic, the threat of losing our economic sovereignty has only increased. So, will the Minister commit today to conducting a full review of the Investment Canada Act? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to thank the member opposite for his very important question. He raises a very important point that today, at a time when our economy is facing a very difficult situation, Canadian companies are particularly vulnerable. And today is also a time when we have particular reason to pay attention to the sanctity of our supply chains in areas like medical equipment, also when it comes to food security. And let me assure the honourable member that our government, informed by the work of our excellent intelligence analysts, is very focused on ensuring the safety and sanctity of Canadian companies and of ensuring that they are not acquired inappropriately. Thank you.
Mr. Fatt.
Madam Chair, that wasn't my question. My question was a yes or no. Will the minister conduct a full review of the Investment Canada Act to prevent Canadian flagship companies and our strategic assets from being bought up by hostile foreign interests? Yes or no?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Let me say, the member points to a very important issue, one that I think should concern all Canadians. It is never right for Canadian companies to be acquired by hostile foreign interests in the world today, where we have more reason than ever to be concerned about our national security. We need to pay particular attention to this, and we are.
Mr. Fatt.
I noticed, Madam Chair, that the minister did not answer the question, a simple yes or no question. So I'll ask it this way. Why won't the minister stand up for Canada and protect us against foreign investments that would harm our economy, undermine our sovereignty, and threaten our national security? Why?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would really like to assure the member opposite and all Canadians, our government will always stand up for the national interest. We will always stand up for national security, and that definitely means not allowing hostile interests to buy up our companies.
Mr. Fatt.
Mr. Chair, as a result of Brexit, our third largest trade partner, the UK, has announced that it would be reimposing tariffs on Canadian exports. Now, at the same time, the UK has reached out to Canada to begin negotiations on a new free trade agreement, which would eliminate those tariffs. But there's a problem. The Prime Minister has repeatedly failed Canadians on the trade file, whether it's farmers, the aluminum workers, auto workers, forestry workers, the bad NAFTA deal that they negotiated. So now the Prime Minister has an opportunity to rehabilitate his tattered reputation on trade. The UK is anxious to negotiate free trade agreements with like-minded partners, including with Canada. So can the minister tell us what steps have been taken to engage with the UK on a free trade agreement? And will the minister assure us that his government won't again betray our dairy, egg, and chicken farmers and the aluminum industry the way they did in the new NAFTA?
Time is almost up. I would ask the Deputy Prime Minister to respond briefly. Or the minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank the honourable member for that very good question. Canada and the UK is a strong partner, as we are with the European Union. And I want to assure Canadian businesses and my colleague that Canadian businesses, that CETA will continue to apply to the UK during the Brexit transition, and that we will continue to work with the UK to secure our strong and stable trading relationship going forward to the benefit of our economies in both of our countries. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Heritage, Mr. Benson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Hey, countries worldwide are recognizing the pandemic's terrible effects on their energy industries by scaling back carbon taxes. Norway, for example, reduced carbon tax to zero until 2024. Many countries with the carbon tax instituted relief measures to help their citizens and producers. Yet Canada's industry is reeling, but the Liberals are sticking with their tax hike. Why is Canada among the world's outliers on the carbon tax during a crisis?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker. Our most urgent priority, obviously, at this time is COVID-19 and the health and safety of Canadians. But as we support Canadians through this time, we also have to ensure the long-term economic, environmental, and physical well-being of our country and of our citizens. Putting a price on pollution is a critical part of Canada's plan to tackle emissions. It's the most affordable and effective way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And I would say that the way in which we've implemented this puts money in the pockets of families. The vast majority of Canadians get more money back than they pay in the context of the price on pollution. It is a policy that's good for the environment, and it's a policy that's good for the economy.
Small business owners are flagging problems with the commercial rent relief program. They say it's flawed and it's inflexible. It favors landlords with mortgage properties over those with clear title, and businesses must lose 70% of revenues just to get relief. Our party has proposed including landlords without mortgages
and amending the revenue test. Will the government use these proposals to make the program more responsive to need?
The Honourable Minister, 27-second response. The Honourable Minister.
Landlords without mortgages to consider how they can be part of this program. We see that as important. Unfortunately, I think my internet connection has just stopped. Madam
It's working
Speaker.
fine at this end.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like him to know that. And of course, we have released the details on this program yesterday, and we're looking forward to take up and encouraging landlords to become part of this. We'll together with the provinces, we'll continue to work on this issue.
Mr. Benzin.
Well, Mr. Finance Minister, this Liberal government is spending enormous amounts of money every day, borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars to do it. But when you borrow money, you need to show your lenders a plan for how you'll pay it back. To the Finance Minister, what will you ask Canadians to do to repay this money? Will you raise the GST? Are you going to raise personal income taxes, corporate taxes? What will be the pain for Canadians after this?
I do want to remind the member that he has to address the question directly to the chair and not the individual member. The Honourable Minister has 30 seconds to respond.
Madam Speaker, thank you. We believe it's absolutely imperative that we support individuals and support businesses through this particularly challenging time. We recognize that that is extraordinary in terms of the investments that we're making. We have no plans to raise taxes, but do know that when we come out of this, we need a strong economy in order to get back to a growth mode that will support our long-term opportunities.
Mr. Benzin.
Madam Chair, the RCMP laboratory has been continuously revising the list of newly prohibited firearms since the Ordering Council. Many 12-gauge pump-action shotguns have been added, and they are still being added as we speak. They seem to consider them variants of the AR-15. Would the minister provide the recognized definition of variant as found in legislation so that the citizens of Canada can have some clarity around whether their 12-gauge shotguns have suddenly become prohibited firearms?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
I want to thank the member opposite for the question and the opportunity to clarify. I think our list, which contains over 1,500 models and variants of various weapons that are now prohibited, I think is quite clear. But in addition, the AR-15 frame and model is also clearly prohibited on this list, and that is now therefore subject to prohibition decisions made by the RCMP. That clarity is, I think, crystal clear. And those weapons, as we have stated from the outset, have no place in our society and are very quite appropriately prohibited.
The Honourable Member has 10 seconds.
Madam Chair, quickly, the firearms reference table standards define the bore of a firearm as the inside of the barrel. These standards measure the bore without the choke mechanism attached. The 12-gauge shotgun.
A brief question.
Is 20-millimeter bore would be banned. Does the minister, was he intending to ban these shotguns for all law-abiding farmers?
A brief answer from the minister. The Honourable Minister needs to put his mic on.
Sorry, the answer to the member's question is absolutely no. A 10-gauge shotgun has a bore of 19.69 millimeters. That's recognized by the regulations, and 10-gauge shotguns are not prohibited.
Thank you. Just a reminder, when we're mentioning that there's a brief question, I would ask that the members ask the question and not go into further details. It'll be a lot quicker to get the answer done and respect the time. The Honourable Member for Des Neiges, Missinippi, Churchill River, Mr. Vidal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have recently received a number of emails from Indigenous constituents expressing confusion, fear, and even anger regarding the new gun ban. Can the minister please clarify how this ban will impact Indigenous people in my rural and remote northern Saskatchewan riding who use these weapons to feed themselves and their families during this pandemic?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I understand the confusion because the gun lobby and many of their supporters have been purposely spreading a lot of misinformation about what has been prohibited. But I think it's also clear to explain that an amnesty for 2 years has been put in place as part of this prohibition. And it clearly recognizes Section 35, constitutional Indigenous hunting rights, and allows Indigenous members to continue to use the weapons that were previously allowed for hunting for that purpose during the amnesty period.
Mr. Vidal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the Minister acknowledging that these newly banned guns are in fact used by hunters to feed their families and are critical to the food security in my riding. Let me move on to another question. Before the COVID pandemic, First Nation leaders in my riding were having checkpoints set up at the entrances to their communities to address safety concerns related to violent gang activity. Gang activity is a major source of concern for these First Nations and many rural areas in my riding. The government's gun ban will do nothing to address this problem. My question for the minister is, who from a First Nations perspective did you or your government consult before issuing the order in council?
I want to remind the member he's to address the question to the chair. The Honourable Minister has about 40 seconds to respond.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And there was very extensive consultation on this issue with Canadians from coast to coast, including in Indigenous communities. But I also would remind the member that our government invested $347 million in the last Parliament into policing right across the country. And that money is available. Some $214 million has been made available to the provinces to distribution to municipal and Indigenous police services to deal with gun and gang issues. Now, the member's party voted against those measures, but we'll continue to work hard to keep communities safe and to make the investments that actually will achieve that safety.
Mr. Vital.
Madam Speaker, this government was elected on a promise of reconciliation and consultation. In doing that, they agreed to an MOU behind the backs of the elected chiefs and the members of the Wet'suwet'en people. John Horgan, the Premier of British Columbia, acknowledged last Wednesday on the eve of the signing that the consultation process had fallen short of his expectations. Does the minister agree with Premier Horgan that the government has fallen short in the consultation process?
The Honourable Minister.
In 1997, the Supreme Court of Canada strongly encouraged parties in the Delgamuukw and Guestaway to pursue good faith negotiations regarding Aboriginal rights. The MOU that we signed breathes life into that decision by marking an important step in our shared work. It lays a path for substantive discussions towards the final agreements, which would then describe the future governance and implementation of Wet'suwet'en rights and title. It's not an agreement on the implementation of the rights, but a shared commitment to begin that work.
Mr. Vidal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the March 1st news release announcing the MOU, it says, and I quote, "If ratified, Minister Fraser and Minister Bennett have agreed to return to Wet'suwet'en territory to sign." Why did the minister, when she knew that the elected chiefs and Wet'suwet'en people were not consulted and there was in fact no ratification process, proceed with signing this agreement anyways?
The Honourable Minister.
Any agreement going forward would have to be taken back to all the Wet'suwet'en people for approval through a process that must clearly demonstrate the consent of the members of the nation. It was important that we begin by beginning, and with the COVID outbreak, it was impossible to do that in person.
A brief question from Mr. Vidal. There's only 30 seconds left.
I appreciate that, Minister, and that's my whole point on the Wet'suwet'en issue. At committee, we have been consistently shut down for discussing this issue, and you just used the reason that due to the pandemic, the consultation process was not allowed to be carried out appropriately. So again, I ask, why did you sign this agreement when there wasn't proper consultation?
And again, I remind Mr. Vidal that he's to address the questions to the chair and not to the individual members. The Honourable Minister, a brief answer, please.
I think the member has misrepresented what I said. It was impossible because of COVID to go back to do the signing. But we do believe that the work of the hereditary chiefs and the work that will happen now with the elected chiefs will go forward because of the MOU that was signed.
L'honorable député de Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Prime Minister announced the summer jobs program a few months ago and tried to tell us that there were 70,000 new jobs. Then he announced the Canadian Emergency Student Benefit, encouraging our young people to lie on their sofa. Now he's saying that the summer jobs program still exists. What inconsistency! Organizations are waiting for the confirmation of the summer jobs program to be able to rehire students. In Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, I've only seen 57 jobs out of a 140 pre-approved that were confirmed. Why are we waiting to confirm the others? We're now 1 month behind schedule. CEGEP students and university students have finished their studies and are ready to start working. This government's inconsistencies are incomprehensible. Can the government confirm all the jobs right now so that organizations and businesses that can hire, as well as allow our young people to participate in our economic recovery following COVID-19? The Honourable Minister.
This question. Madam Speaker, let me assure everyone and all Canadians that we amended and improved the Canada Summer Job Program this summer in response to COVID-19 and the reality that the jobs that were available in January just aren't available anymore. So we're working really hard, both with MPs and with employers, to ensure that there are meaningful opportunities for our young people and that we could reach the target of 70,000 jobs for this summer. We're going to do that, Madam Speaker. What I can also tell you is when we announced our $9 billion student package, we included an additional 76,000 jobs. Now, I appreciate that this is a little burdensome perhaps on MPs, but I know they're really willing to dig in and help their communities in this time of crisis. Thank you.
Mr. Godin.
Mr. Godin. Madam Chair, the Minister has just said that the program was improved. Well, when jobs are cut during a crisis, a pandemic caused by COVID-19, I see no improvement. With the Job Summer Program during this pandemic this year, can the Minister of Employment and Labour please tell us why, through this program, fewer businesses and few organizations will be able to hire a student? The Honourable Minister.
Member first question, and I'll offer the clarification that that's not actually the case. We are providing 70,000 jobs through Canada Summer Jobs. That was our commitment. That remains our commitment. Perhaps he's referring to the fact that all jobs are now subsidized at 100%. And I can assure him that from the beginning, we budgeted these jobs all at 100%. So while we are now increasing subsidies for these jobs, we are providing the exact same number of jobs as we've always committed to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Godin. Madam Chair, what I just heard is not the truth, because I can tell you that I have the same budget in my riding of Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, and I've got 40 fewer jobs. So I don't understand the Minister's calculations. Let's move on to something else. Considering that the Prime Minister said several times that all Canadian citizens will receive help, I have two very specific cases. Here's one. What does the Prime Minister say to a business person who had to close their doors indefinitely? This person has no EI benefits, has no CERB, has lost his money for to fund his retirement. What has the government planned for that business owner? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and my honourable colleague for that question. I know how difficult it is for so many of our entrepreneurs and small businesses throughout this difficult period. It's why we've introduced many measures to help our small businesses and our entrepreneurs through this. So whether it is the wage subsidy or the small business loan, or just helping them keep their costs low by deferring GST and HST and customs duties, a number of measures, many measures, and the work's not done. We're going to keep working to support our small businesses in our country. Thank you.
Une brève question de...
You have 10 seconds left for one final question, Mr. Godet. Thank you, Madam Chair. So there's nothing for that business person. Other question. A 63-year-old person with chronic disease had to stop working 3 years ago. She has no EI and no CERB. What is the Prime Minister going to tell that honest citizen? A brief response from the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we can tell that citizen that we have her back through the increase to the GST, through the seniors benefit. Oh no, I apologize. The age limit wasn't there, but I can assure if that citizen is receiving early OAS or GIS, we are there for them. Thank you.
The next question goes to Ms. Wilson-Raybould. Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Thank you. Race-related crimes are on the rise against persons of Asian descent in Canada. I think we can all agree that there is no place for this in our society. Having issues with the manner in which the government of another country conducts itself does not give license for being racist. It has absolutely no bearing on how we expect people to treat one another wherefore hundreds or thousands of Asian Canadians, this is their home too. What is the government going to do to step up actions against hate crimes in this country and send a clear and public message that Canada will not tolerate other countries' failure to respect the rule of law?
The Honourable Minister.
I would like to thank the member for that really important question. This is something that we have been seeing. There's been an increase of racist and discriminatory acts, as the member has signaled. There is no space for this within Canada. We will continue to condemn all forms of racism and discrimination. We do have an anti-racism strategy, and I look forward to hopefully another follow-up question so I can expand on the work that we're doing.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Thank you. There's going to be significant cost to some charities and not-for-profit organizations to adopt some of the government health and safety policies in light of COVID-19, not dissimilar to the costs incurred to provide physical security to houses of worship in light of the rise of hate crimes globally. Will the federal government consider a scenario where there is a new program or update to the security and infrastructure program to help cover these costs?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, actually, even pre-COVID, we recognized that there was an increase of discrimination, and when it came to places of worship, especially being attacked. And that's why we put in measures to ensure that there was opportunities for places of worship to be able to hire security, to put in camera infrastructure, and so forth. We will continue to ensure that those measures are in place, even post-COVID, because it's essential that every Canadian be able to contribute and do their fair share and do their part. Unless somebody is Indigenous, everyone has immigrated to Canada at some point, and it's important that we stand up for each other, and it's important that we call out these racist attacks.
We'll go now to Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Well, thank you. As many jurisdictions begin lifting restrictions, and as we as Canadians adapt to our new normal, we need to be prepared for a second wave of COVID-19. Can the government confirm that it is planning for a second wave? Will the existing aid programs be reinstituted in the event of a second wave? Will there be enough PPE and critical medical equipment? And do we have, or are we ensuring that we have all the necessary authorities put in place to respond quickly and effectively?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Member of Parliament for a very important question. In fact, having been able to get through what I would say our first wave of COVID-19, it's allowed us to learn some very important lessons about how to work even more efficiently together at the provincial and territorial level. The work that we need to continue to do to acquire PPE, for example, to ensure that we have the process in place to do rapid testing and contact tracing, to be able to support citizens to adopt healthy behaviors, to help citizens understand that we really are just in the first leg of this and that we're going to need to continue.
We'll go back to Ms. Wilson-Raybould. Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Well, I appreciate that answer. I mean, moving slightly, although we there's still some time before there is going to be a vaccine, and I appreciate, and it's good to see the international cooperation around respect for information sharing. I believe Canada has a significant international role to play. Will Canada take a strong stand at the World Health Assembly to support vulnerable populations around the world having access to the vaccine, and that there is equitable distribution? And what steps is the government taking in this regard?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely. In fact, it was very important at the World Health Assembly to have Canada's statement presented that called for a global solution to COVID-19. I'm really grateful for this question because, in fact, we know that we can't eliminate COVID-19 if we don't act together. And we know that Canada has an opportunity to provide leadership, to provide funding, as we have to, for example, organizations like Gavi that ensure vaccine access to some of the most vulnerable in our world. So we'll continue to do that work to encourage our partners all across the world to see this as a true partnership in protecting our citizens.
The next question goes to Ms. Kukuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a very quick shout out to the IT team, and our translators have been working so hard to get everything working as smoothly as possible for us, and great to see more and more headsets as we continue with virtual parliament. My first question, Mr. Chair, Baugtutit, the organization that represents Inuit women of Canada, had identified the lack of transitional and shelter housing as their highest priority leading into 2020 prior to the pandemic. Across Canada, emergency shelters are well past their limit and tragically turn Canadians who need help every single night. This is all truer for Inuit women. It is also clear that COVID-19 has forced more women into dangerous and abusive positions and situations. In this moment of crisis, will the federal government commit to supporting critical transitional housing and shelter infrastructure like what Baugtutit has proposed for Inuit Nunavut and Nunavut?
The Honourable Minister.
I thank my colleague for her very important question. And I'd also like to provide, on behalf of the Government of Canada, and I think all of us parliamentarians, our gratitude to frontline supports workers, including those at Paktuti for their work and their strong advocacy. We are absolutely committed to supporting their work in addressing and preventing gender-based violence, and we are committed to doing so as a whole of government approach.
Ms. Kukuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That wasn't actually any answer, so myself and my office will be following up. My next question, prior to COVID-19, communities across Nunavut were already facing a lack of clean drinking water. Nunavut Mute are working as hard as they can to follow these health guidelines that have been proposed. They face painful decisions like choosing to wash their hands or having enough water to cook and be able to clean. As we move into summer months, especially with spring melt and everything going on environmentally, it will be even harder for some communities to access basic drinking water and accessible water needs. COVID-19 has put Nunavut's basic human rights into focus. When will this federal government commit to making sure that every community in Nunavut has access to clean water? If they need funding for it, why don't they finally crack down on tax havens?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the member. I want to begin by commending the government of Nunavut for their hard work during this pandemic, and I believe it's because of their hard work and their actions that we have not seen the same outbreak that other regions have seen. I completely agree. The needs of Nunavut are unique, and that's why Nunavut has received over $30 million to address the immediate health, economic, and transportation priorities related to COVID-19, as well as $5 million for air services. The issue of water for Canadian citizens, North and South, Inuit and not Indigenous and not, is of tremendous importance to our government. We have committed to making sure every Canadian, every Inuit citizen, every First Nation and Métis have access to clean and drinking water.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to point out that of the 30 million that was sent, it took over a month to actually get to the territory, and it was of 42 million that was requested. So it wasn't enough money, and it took quite a while to actually even get to the territory. In my riding of Nunavut, airlines are the only way to get in between communities and in and out of the territory. It's our transportation, it's our ambulance, it's our highways. Airlines serving Nunavut have committed to providing services as they can, but are facing a tremendously uncertain future without the normal commercial transportation that their businesses are built around. When is this federal government going to step up and make sure that remote communities across Nunavut still get the deliveries and resources that they need for the months to come?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we are very concerned, obviously, about ensuring that air travel to communities in the north is possible. And that is why we worked with the government of Nunavut to come to an agreement whereby we would transfer to them $5 million to ensure that Canadian North was able to provide the necessary services, not only to move people across the territory, but also to ensure that essential cargo could be delivered.
La prochaine question va Madame Vignola. Madame Vignola.
Ms. Vignola, thank you. In a crisis period, it's important to face the crisis, but also to prepare for the period after the crisis, to carry out that preparation and know where we are right now. It is important to have an economic update. Will the minister table the economic update in June as anticipated? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a very important question. As you know, we explain the measures and the cost of the measures taken in a transparent manner every day, every week. And we know it's important to take into account our future. And of course, when the economic situation is more stable, Ms. Vignola, will we get the economic update in June as anticipated? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chairman, we're looking at the situation, and when the economic situation is more stable, Ms. Vignola, in order to ensure economic stability, we have to look forward, and to do that, we have to know where we're at. A complete economic update in June is essential. Will we have one? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's very important to have enough information to do our work, and that's why there will be an update when the situation is stable enough for forecasts. Ms. Vignola. Well, what are the forecasts about economic growth in the next months? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chairman, we know that the situation is very fluid with this pandemic, so it's difficult to say. Ms. Vignola. Let's change the question. Does the minister have an economic reopening plan? The Honourable Minister. And Mr. Chairman, we work together to ensure that Canadians and employers have a plan during the pandemic, and we will consider the following steps in light of that. Ms. Vignola. A plan during the pandemic, yes, but I'm talking about reopening the economy. Is there a plan for that? And if so, can we look at it? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chairman, of course, we're working with all MPs during this pandemic to ensure that we can look at the situation when the situation is more stable. Mr. Speaker, companies are prepared to contribute to the economic reopening by creating high-quality jobs. There is one here in the Quebec City region, the Davie Shipyard. Its reopening will bring about 3,000 jobs. Will the minister allow the ship to sail right past us, or will he have an economic reopening plan that involves Davie? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chairman, we know that we have to work with businesses on the reopening plan. That is a very important thing. For the time being, we're considering how we can protect employees and employers and have a plan until the end of the crisis, and then we'll have a plan for the reopening. Ms. Viola, I understand the need to protect people during the crisis, but we also have to take a step back and see the forest, not just the trees. We have to look forward, and that's why I have a question about the economic recovery and reopening. Is there a plan? Is there an update that will allow for that plan? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Chairman, we know that it's very important to consider our next steps, and that's why a week ago we considered wage subsidies till late August with certain criteria, and thus we will work to get a better situation, one that is changing every month. We will look at our considerations very quickly. Now we will go on to
Mr. Melillo. Mr. Melillo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will direct my questions to the Minister of Public Safety regarding this government's gun confiscation plan. I'd like to ask the Minister why this government is creating more rules for hunters and sports shooters instead of targeting violent criminals.
The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And perhaps the member opposite missed our announcement where we prohibited weapons that were not designed either for hunting or sport shooting, but were designed for soldiers to use in combat, and they have no place in a civil society. Those weapons are now prohibited. And I'm looking forward to Mr. Melillo. Mr. Melillo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has actually admitted earlier in this committee that some of the firearms that he has prohibited are used for hunting. And I would like to note that the Minister often uses terms like military style and assault style. I'd like to provide the Minister some time to define that ambiguous term for us.
The Honourable Minister. Yeah, if the member opposite needs any clarity, I'd invite him to go to the Order in Council and look at the 1,500 models and variants that we have now prohibited, and they include such weapons as those that were used at Christchurch, at Sandy Hook, in Montreal at the École Polytechnique, in Quebec at the mosque, weapons that have been used in mass murder and have no place in our society. Mr. Melillo.
I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker, that does not provide any more clarity for us, but I will move on, and I would like to know if the Minister's Department has any estimates on how many gangs and criminal organizations are going to comply with this ban.
The Honourable Minister. Yeah, we know, Mr. Speaker, that many of the people that are involved in criminal activities get their guns from a number of different locations. And so that's why we'll be taking very strong steps at the very first opportunity to bring legislation forward to stop guns from being smuggled into the country, stop them from being stolen from gun owners, and stop them from being criminally diverted. We've made investments in communities and in law enforcement to deal with gun activity.
Go back to Mr. Melillo. Mr. Melillo. If the Minister has the number, can his department, can he tell us how many gangs he expects to comply with this ban?
The Honourable Minister. Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I fully expect that as a result of the measures that we will take, it will be far more difficult for anyone who wishes to commit a crime with a firearm to gain access to that firearm, and for firearms that have been used to murder innocent civilians and women in this country. They have now been prohibited.
The Conservative Party has brought forward a number of solutions to combat gun crime. These include stronger mental health supports and cracking down on illegal gun smuggling. I would like to know if the Minister agrees that programs such as those would be more beneficial than his plan.
The Honourable Minister. Yeah, let's talk facts, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, a Conservative government prior to our being elected actually cut the RCMP and our border services officers by hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of people and staff, thereby weakening our response to those gangs. And for some reason, the Conservatives don't want to talk about guns when we're talking about gun crime. We'll go back to Mr. Melillo.
Does the Minister know how much this firearms confiscation plan is going to cost? And if so, would he agree that that money would be better spent on cracking down on gun smuggling?
The Honourable Minister. I'm glad the member mentioned gun smuggling because we invested $86 million in CBSA and in the RCMP to conduct investigations at our border for those gangs and individuals responsible for smuggling guns, and the member's party voted against that.
Mr. Melillo.
I would like to provide the minister about 30 seconds to elaborate on that plan and tell us how his government has actually taken action on cracking down on gun smuggling, because many people haven't seen it.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, I'd invite the member to maybe drop by one of the hardworking posts at point of entry where our CBSA officers are doing an extraordinary job and utilizing the new tools and resources and staffing that we have provided, and we're going to continue to do that by bringing forward new authorities, new offenses, and new penalties for those people who smuggle guns into this country, and I hope the member opposite will finally support.
Mr. Melillo, a brief question.
Thank you. I'd like to know if the minister has any stats on how many guns are smuggled into Canada each year versus guns that are domestically sourced and used in gun crimes in Canada.
The Honourable Minister.
Yes, we do.
Okay, and I'm afraid that's all the. That one caught me off guard. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for questions today. This committee stands adjourned. Le comité est adjourné. Bonne journée à vous tous.
Tout le monde.